Hey Chuck, welcome to our podcast. I'm really delighted to have you on the meeting. So, um, so first of all, Chuck, can you tell a bit about yourself?
Well, thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm always excited to talk about ServiceNow. So, a little bit about myself. I'll try to keep this short, because old men have a lot of experience, and I'm a podcaster and I like to talk. So, I'll do my best to respect the listener's time. I am a husband, a father, an IT professional, a content creator. I'll explain that in a second, and a martial artist. So, I live in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States. I am currently a senior developer advocate at ServiceNow, which means ties back to that content creator part. I create videos and blog articles and write books and webinars, host events, and I'm a community leader. All of this is developer facing for our developer audience, whether they're customers or partners or independent contractors, what have you. I am focused on the bridge between our ServiceNow developers and our internal product management team. So I take the information from them, put it into content, and represent it externally, and also listen to our external voice of the customers and relay that back to our product managers. I've been a podcaster.
Yeah.
Just one final. Yeah.
So sorry to come to interrupt there, but when you say ServiceNow developer, are these ServiceNow employees, or are these people who are using ServiceNow to build solutions?
These are the customers and partners that are using ServiceNow to configure, customize, build, extend anything they're doing on the platform, is as simple as moving form fields around or going into some deep scripting and integrations. That's where I play.
Okay.
One final note, I've been a podcaster for more than 16 years and also the co-author of Podcasting for Dummies. A little bit of experience.
Oh, I've seen that book. I really need to listen to it. So looking forward to it. Maybe I can, probably I will be able to learn quite a bit of it. Yeah. So how long have you been a podcaster?
16 years. I started in late 2004 with a podcast that was then split into two different shows because there was significantly different content on that one show. And one of them is still running today. So I am a very long, continuous podcaster. Currently do three shows. One is called Podcasting for Dummies, the companion podcast, which is an audio podcast to our book. The other is called Technorama. That's the one that's been running since early 2005. And the third is called The Topic is Trek, which is pretty self-titled. It's about Star Trek. I do one for work for ServiceNow developers called Breakpoint. So if you're a ServiceNow developer and you're interested in that, you can find that at bit.ly/sn-break-point. I should have the little desk bell there when you name a URL or a website, you have to go ding.
We'll make sure that these links are being advertised together with the podcast itself. Yeah. All right. So being a developer advocate, so how big is that audience? How many developers are you talking to?
Oh, I just had the number the other day. I don't recall what it was. I know that as far as the ServiceNow community goes, we've got about 275,000 members in there.
Wow.
The developer community, I wish it's less than that. And I'm trying to remember what the number was. I believe it's north of 100,000.
Wow.
Current active people in their developer instances on the developer program is in the 50, 60,000 range. Don't quote me on that. I should know those numbers better than I do at this point. So I apologize, but it's a significant audience.
Yeah, and it's also a tremendous community. If you look at all the reactions you can see on the community side, you ask a question, and within a couple of minutes you get a couple of answers, which is it's very dynamic.
Yeah, as somebody who's been involved with that community, in fact, my online community involvement goes back into the 80s with electronic bulletin boards. Remember the old dial-up stuff? Curated one of those. with 40 years of experience, 30 plus years, whatever it is, uh, this is a wonderful, wonderful community. Everybody is so helpful. The ServiceNow community over at community.servicenow.com. There, now I've got my bell. And of course, the developer specific community at developer.servicenow.com. And we've got Slack channels and blogs and newsletters. It really is a wonderful community. We're starting to see a lot of people branch out and start their own brand with their own blogs and their own video channels. And that's just magnificent, because it's one thing when someone inside ServiceNow shouts from the rooftops, hey, this is a wonderful feature and here's how you use it. It's a totally different impact when a customer or a partner starts doing that as well. So very excited to see that kind of growth and enthusiasm. And when you go to a conference like Knowledge and everybody's happy, I mean, it's really bizarre. Even if there's something that they want to see improved in the product or the platform, very happy to share that information, very cordial, and our product managers are able to listen. I remember a couple of years ago, somebody was asking about some automation and some CI/CD pipeline stuff. They asked me, and I found the nearest product manager that could help. And I said, here, you two talk. And within a year, we had it in the platform. Okay. So they really do listen and act on that.
Yeah, ServiceNow is in many cases positioned as a service management platform. It's much richer, isn't it? It has so much capabilities.
Absolutely. It's a workflow platform. It really is. And one of the things that is going to be big on our messaging this year is not only are the developers our advocates, our evangelists within the organization, because a lot of organizations still see us as an ITSM ticketing system, and they're not getting the full value out of that. So it is a software development platform. That's what Fred Luddy built back in 2004. His vision is to have a platform to allow regular employees, citizen developers, route work effectively through the enterprise. And we are adding more and more of these no and low code capabilities to the platform to enable that. So when a CIO or a VP of IT says, or even a line of business says, we need a new application to manage our purchasing management process, we need the developers to go, you want to look at ServiceNow. You really do, because we can do it faster. We can maintain it better. It's supported. And that's really what our big mission is right now. And I don't want to get too standing at the pulpit and preach, but it really is still a barrier that a lot of organizations don't recognize ServiceNow as a software development platform.
Okay. Oh, interesting. But whenever you build out such solutions, integrations are pretty important.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially now, you have to integrate with almost everything in whatever your system you are embedding your environment into, right? So,
yes.
And given that this podcast is about integrations, and we have you on board today, I'm really curious about the roadmap that ServiceNow has before product roadmap on integrations itself. So could you elaborate on this? I know it's
sure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're jumping right to the end. Usually we save the roadmap for the end, but absolutely, we'll put it right here. The short answer for the roadmap is more out-of-box integrations for the things that customers commonly integrate with, more flexibility, so it's easier to configure these. They're not so brittle and purpose-driven, and more reuse and less coding. That's really what it comes down to. Let me introduce some terms so people are familiar with these. If they haven't heard of these in ServiceNow, we've come out with a feature about 3 years ago called Flow Designer. I think they came out next in release. This is a natural language workflow. Our traditional legacy workflow was more of the graphical, put things on the flow. It was kind of like Visio on steroids. So if you needed to make a decision, you could do that and hook up the wires and the branches. Uh, this is more natural language where you say, based on this trigger, I'm going to carry out one or more series of actions. For example, I'll ask for an approval. Below that, I put, if the approval was approved, you go down this branch. It's very much like how you would do it on a whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a trigger and you have actions. That's Flow Designer. Integration Hub it takes advantage of Flow Designer as its graphical front end. But this is where some of those actions, like sending a notification, updating a record, looking up a list of records, things that you do in Flow Designer, they're manifested in Flow Designer as actions to more or less transparently go do
Mm-hmm.
your integration. So if I say I need to send a message out to Slack, I go into the action menu and I pick Slack and I say post message. Fill out a couple of easy form fields. Like, what is the message? What channel do you want to send it to? Done. I'm not writing script. I'm not, the credentials are already provided, or API keys, whatever we need to do that is in the system. It's very, very simple, whether it's Slack or Microsoft Teams or Active Directory, YouTube, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics. We've got like over 100 of these collections of actions. We call each grouping a spoke. So we've got,
Okay, the spoke. Yeah.
now you get the idea of integration hub and
Uh-huh.
spokes. Okay, somebody was creative on the naming, but it makes sense. So I've written a few of these because they just don't exist yet, or may not exist because of the scale somebody's looking at. We
Mm.
host our podcasts for ServiceNow on a service. They have REST APIs. I'm building a spoke for that service so that I can automate my podcast process at work. That's what it's all about, is make it fast, make it easy, automate it, get your productivity out of there, because I don't gain any value by watching a status bar while a
Mm.
file uploads, or pasting in text automatically from one record system of record on ServiceNow to our podcasting host.
Mm.
That's not value add time. I want to push a button, say I am done, post this, schedule it to release on Wednesday, and away we go.
Really?
So
So the whole publication process of podcast is being orchestrated in ServiceNow.
it will be shortly. I have to finish building that spoke.
Okay.
But that's the vision. Yeah, and that should be everybody's vision, is how can I take out the waste time in here? If I'm writing HTML here and a text list there and markdown there, all with the same content, that's an opportunity for automation.
Mm.
And it's an occupational hazard to work at ServiceNow, because you start seeing these everywhere. I go to the doctor's office and they hand me a clipboard and I just about cry. Like,
No.
you have my information. It could have been transferred from Doctor 1 to Doctor 2. Why am I filling out a clipboard with the same questions? I should be able
Yeah.
to build this from my phone and say, here's the medications I'm currently taking. Done. This is just, it's ludicrous right now.
Yeah. Of course, organizing all this integration is a kind of a challenge, right? So every doctor has its own clipboard and form, and
Yeah, it can be. It can be. And we talked about multiple integrations. You obviously want some sort of architect involved with this.
yeah,
You say, we're going to send information this way on a nightly basis. We're going to receive information this way on a schedule, on a batched basis. So having that sort of architecture and layout is very, very helpful before you dive into an integration.
yeah, indeed. So the just to conclude the question on the roadmap is what ServiceNow is doing is providing a platform allowing to do that integration in an easy, low-code way.
Very much so, yes. And we're continuing to invest in that. We still have customers asking, hey, do you have an integration for this telephony system or that purchasing system? We'll build them, because as our CEO, Bill McDermott, likes to say, at the heart of every great experience is a workflow. I take it one step further and say, at the heart of every great workflow is an integration.
Yeah, right. And so the plan is that ServiceNow is building these spokes, as you call them, or is this something that the ServiceNow partners are taking care?
Both, actually, both. We work with our partners, so we don't have competitive products going out or duplicating efforts. So we have a roadmap for the next 3 or 4 quarters of what we plan to release.
Mm-hmm.
And they take a look at that and go, oh, I see some white spacing here. We've got an opportunity. Customers are asking for this. Looks like ServiceNow isn't building it. So we'll go build it. And they can
Okay.
put that on our store. So we have a store. When you go into Flow Designer, it says, here's what you've got installed. Here's what you don't have installed. Would you like to install it and buy it? Very much
Okay.
like the phone experience. It's like, go to the store, buy an app. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it's not.
Just like an iPhone, right?
That's what we're working for. Again, it's that experience. We don't want
Mm.
it difficult to build an integration. Say, oh, I've got to send something out to
Mm.
Microsoft Dynamics, and oh, well, that's a 16-week effort to build that integration. No, it's not. You go to the store, you download it, you put in your credentials, and you start putting actions on your flows. You could be
Okay.
up and running within minutes.
Yeah, right. So so there's an upcoming release of ServiceNow Quebec, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's in store for Quebec around integrations?
Oh my goodness, I didn't have the slide deck ready. uh, there's a number of things. One of my favorites is a REST API trigger.
Okay.
So you can receive incoming REST requests and trigger a flow. This was
Okay.
possible before if you put two separate technologies together. A scripted REST API that's listening for something, providing an endpoint for a third-party service. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say, I'll take a simple example. I use Todoist as my task manager, and Todoist sends a request to my instance. Previously, I would have to build a scripted REST API that would then call a flow or a subflow. And I could
Mm-hmm.
do that with basically one line of script that I copy and paste. But this puts it together so that the trigger of the flow is a REST trigger. And I can define what the endpoint is, what the query parameters are, the path parameters.
Yeah.
And then if that's triggered successfully, carry out these other actions, ask for an approval, update a record, da 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 da. So
Yeah.
that's one of my favorites.
Oh, okay. Nice. Now you can see some applications there.
Yeah, you could trigger a flow a number of ways just for historical purposes. They're a lot like what we call business rules
Mm,
or scheduled jobs. So you can trigger a flow based on a record being created or updated, or
mm-hmm.
both. You could do it scheduled, nightly, hourly, daily, once.
Mm,
You can attach it to a catalog item. So if somebody orders a request or onboards an employee, you can trigger a flow.
mm,
There was another one, in inbound email. So you
mm-hmm.
get when an email is received and it matches some conditions, subject contains emergency, trigger this flow, create a record, do what,
Yeah.
send a message out. What do you need to do? So there's a number of different ways you can trigger flows, and more are on the roadmap for that as well.
Mm.
So having that REST API as part of Integration Hub is very, very helpful.
And this triggers another question: is how do you how do you maintain such an environment where you have more and more of these integrations being implemented? What's the do you have any advice for our listeners on this topic?
Yes, it would be very similar to the way you maintain any other application.
Mm,
I mean, you definitely want good documentation
mm-hmm.
of what this integration is, what it does, how it behaves, how it's been configured. Some of that may be redundant. I apologize.
Mm,
But I think the key is to understand what you've built as you build it up.
mm,
If it's been 6 years and you've got a handful of integrations, you're going to have to do a little back homework. I approach every project as if I'm not the one going to be maintaining it. So I
mm-hmm.
want to make sure that I hand it off, or in many cases, when I come back 2 years later, say, what did I build? How did I do this? What was I thinking? There's some documentation, even if it's
Mm.
just a
Yeah,
good
yeah,
note in a description field. That's better than nothing.
yeah.
But some organizations, depending on their maturity, may have more of an application lifecycle management
Mm-hmm.
attached to that. That's always an option as well. So depending on your level of maturity and your level of pain and how many mistakes you've made in the past, you may have a different view on how to manage and maintain
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, exactly. That's indeed. Yeah, maintaining integrations is one aspect which is not considered a lot whenever you start with your integration.
Right.
But well, a year later or like 6 months later, you were thinking, what indeed what was built at that moment.
And if you inherited something and you don't know anything about it, the questions
Mm,
to ask about that existing integration are very similar to the questions you would ask when somebody says, "Oh, we need to build a new integration and exchange information this way."
mm,
There's a whole series of them that I put together in a video, but basically it's what are we talking to? How are we talking to it? What are the protocols and payloads and formats that we can use?
mm,
How often? What direction?
mm,
Unidirectional, bidirectional? Who's the source of authority? When are we doing it? Is it nightly? Is it in batch? Is it single record on demand? So there's several questions you need to understand to discover what those true requirements are. And that
mm.
can help dictate the path of how you build this integration.
Yeah. Is cross-company integration a thing? Is that something that being discussed at ServiceNow?
Oh, absolutely. That's at the heart of what we do. There are so many enterprises that have what we call swivel seat or multi-screen, and you're copying and
Mm,
pasting or entering information. Classic cases for automation. I mean, if you think about onboarding a vendor or a customer or an employee, there are
mhm,
many departments that need to be touched when you do that. Um, if I'm onboarding a customer, you could have finance and purchasing and marketing and sales and more departments that are involved with that. Your data could come from your HR system, your CRM, perhaps. People
mm.
put more than customers into their customer relationship management. Active Directory, SCCM. There's all these systems involved with onboarding and offboarding the, and that's a use case that everybody can relate to, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Having access to all of that in one place makes this very attractive from uh, a leadership standpoint, whether it's your CEO, CIO, CISO,
Like,
um,
yeah.
CHRO, any of the C-suite
All
people
the
will get
C's, yeah.
and be able to orchestrate it. Now, it doesn't mean we're taking over that information from your CRM. Heavens no. We know that you've got legacy information and years of work and processes, and the salespeople are working in that CRM. Let them be that source of authority, but we ingest it, process it, and turn it into a workflow so that when a customer has an issue with a vehicle recall, let's say, uh,
Hmm.
you can process that through a workflow. Have they reported it? Have they checked in? Have they had it fixed? These are all stages within a process. And then you can update the CRM with the outcome and say, check, they've responded to the recall.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe they're just looking at a vehicle and you need to go out and check their credit score. It could be an external service, could be an internal service. So
Hmm.
both work equally well. If you think about the touch points to other systems as you move through a process, I've got one right now that deals with multiple internal and external points when I want to put on a webinar. So I'm talking
Hmm.
to developers and we need to put on a webinar. It kills me right now that I have to fill out a Word document. It's,
Hmm.
why isn't this a form in ServiceNow? And we are working on that as a 2021 goal is to automate our webinar process.
Okay, all right. And well, from what I understood, it's not necessary to have a ServiceNow instance on the other side, right? To create this type of integrations.
No, I mean you want at least one ServiceNow instance as your production server. Some
Hmm.
organizations through mergers and acquisitions or whatever have multiples, and tying a ServiceNow instance to another ServiceNow instance is I wouldn't call it. I mean, natural is the wrong word, but it's not a difficult task. It's as equally easy to go ServiceNow to ServiceNow as it is ServiceNow to Microsoft or ServiceNow to Slack or ServiceNow to
Okay.
whatever to make these integrations when it comes to employing Integration Hub to do that.
Hmm.
So ServiceNow is your source of workflow and it touches these other systems. You may be importing users to store in ServiceNow, but it's not the source of authority for users. Active Directory would be that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Okay. But still, you can collect all this information in your ServiceNow instance and then create reports and measure measure different KPIs and so on.
Absolutely. How fast did we get through this process? And are there
Mm-hmm.
opportunities? That's where something like performance analytics might help when you understand what the decision points are. And are we making these decisions effectively to get the work routed through? Or is it a sticking point that we can improve the process?
Could you highlight a bit performance analytics in
Yes.
in it?
So in a nutshell, we've got our traditional onboard reporting. And
Yeah.
reporting is a snapshot in time. It says, here's how many incidents you have open today, right now, for
Okay.
example. And if we were looking at an ITSM use case, I'll use incidents. You may be using customer service management and looking at cases or HR and make up your own system of record of what you want to track. How many are open? How many are closed? How did we? Performance analytics is more of a timeline, a time-based system. How
Mm-hmm.
are we doing? It will take a snapshot of the metadata, not the entire database, but the metadata. So if you tell it to count how many are open today, it will save that so that next week you can compare how many did we do, how many were open versus closed,
Mm-hmm.
what was the mean time to closure, what was are we rising, are we falling? Because in some cases you may want to lower that number, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't see that unless it's over time. So performance analytics is in the background going, all right, take a snapshot. All right, take a snapshot. All right, take a snapshot. Now you've got some metrics that you can compare over time
Yeah.
and start to set things like baselines and targets and trends. You can break them down and say, not only did we have 15 open incidents, 5 of them were P1s. So you can break them down and say, oh, our P1s are trending down, but that
Mm.
means our P3s are actually trending up. What's
For
going on?
instance,
And you can
yeah.
start to look into that. So that's performance analytics in a very quick overview. We also have a new feature in Quebec called workflow optimization uh,
Mm-hmm.
that that will assess the data that's been collected in system logs and history reports that really is rather kind of hard to mine that information, and it will surface that up. I have yet to dig in deep to this, but from what I'm told by colleagues, this is wonderful information to really say, hey, you've got this workflow in action. You've been using it for 6 months, but let me tell you where you might be able to optimize that. So
Ah,
using some of that platform intelligence to get at that historical information to optimize the workflow even further.
is that a kind of AI?
That's my understanding. Yes. Again, I haven't looked into it deeply.
Okay, all right. Um, huh. Interesting. What type of experience do you need to have whenever you're integrating like two platforms? Like if you need to integrate Microsoft Dynamics with a ServiceNow environment.
Excellent question. I like to break this into kind of two levels. There's the administrator no code experience where you're using something like a ServiceNow Integration Hub spoke.
Mm,
Uh, you need fundamental platform knowledge to say, I'm going to take this information and put it in this table. So you need to know your way around the tables. Uh, that's really not that complex of information.
mm,
I'm going to post an update out to my CRM, for example, fill in a
mm,
couple of fields, put it on the flow. Hey, I'm done. I built an integration. Then the level two is more about extending existing integrations or possibly creating new ones. That requires more developer slash system slash architecture skill to
mhm,
ask those questions that I mentioned before about timing and unidirectional and bidirectional, all of that.
mm.
You also need to have a better understanding of how web services run, like
Yeah.
REST and SOAP. Credentials can be kind of tricky, whether it's basic or OAuth 2.0 or an API key. Understand formats a little closer, like XML and JSON. And then also helpful in ServiceNow parlance is understand having a moderate set of skills around JavaScript. You don't
Okay.
need to be a computer science major, but it's helpful to understand when you receive a string, for example. Here's your JSON payload. what do you do with it? Some of that is automated. We have a JSON parser built into IntegrationHub. But there are times when you may need to construct your own payload, or uh, somebody sends you a date in ISO format and you need to turn it into a different format.
Yeah,
So
right.
parsing strings, dealing with objects and arrays, not anything terribly sophisticated, but having a basic knowledge of JavaScript is also very helpful. I'd say that would round out a fairly decent person
Yeah.
as one of these level 2 integration people.
Yeah, I guess that you can set up an integration in a low-code way, and that for specific requirements, you can then fall back to more advanced implementation.
Right. Yeah. When it comes to IntegrationHub, and again, dealing with web services, it gets a little more sophisticated. There, I mean, if you think about it, email is a form of integration. The system will send you a notification. I'm integrating with a human at this point, but realistically, it's going out to an email system. When you reply, I need to be able to ingest that, interpret it, parse it, and update records. Oh, you made a comment. I want a note of your comment in my case record, for example. So email is an authentication-less integration, but it's still an integration nonetheless. You might be importing a spreadsheet. Where's that spreadsheet coming from? How do I process it as an attachment? What are the fields? I do that after every webinar. I've got a spreadsheet with 3 tabs that I've got to import so that I can start processing that information within the system through my workflow.
Cool. Yeah. So there's quite a bit of opportunities we see in cross-company integrations. Companies are looking more and more for having like a seamless and frictionless cooperation with their peers, being their customers or their suppliers. There's a lot to talk about there. I'm sure. Cyan, is that something that's ringing a bell?
It is. I'm not terribly well versed with it, but I know that yes, it is. It requires integration points, as does the ITOM things. If you need to understand what your topology looks like in your enterprise, you can create discovery methods. We provide a couple of them for deep and wide to discover your business services. And once you discover those, I mean, that's an integration. Am I going out with SNMP or WMI or SSH to query these systems and bring that information back in? So there's all kinds of opportunities when it comes to integrations and automation. Like I said, it's an occupational hazard. And once you start looking for these, they will appear out of thin air, and you will probably have people banging down your door from other departments saying, I want to make this better too.
Yeah. All right. So when do you think that you will finalize your podcast integration thing?
Oh my, that is one of my 2021 goals. I've got 15 episodes out there. Give you a quick URL for that, bit.ly/sn-learn-integrations. They take you through the parts on import sets and data sources and transform maps. I still have yet to get to I've scripted the first part of the web services and email. Haven't recorded them yet because I'm waiting for some recording equipment to show up at my studio so I can finish that series. But that will be released in sections over the course of 2021. So there's probably at least another 30 episodes for that.
Okay.
They're short. I'm trying to keep them within the 5 to 10.
Well, it can be very instructive for people trying to learn how to do these integrations. And it's a fun use case, right? It's not
like our partners. I discovered there was a white space. Our training department didn't have a comprehensive integrations. They touch on it in this course and they mention it in that course, and we have a discovery course. But people are hungry for, how do I do a file attachment of an Excel file, or how do I? And I don't get into the use cases specifically, like how do I talk to my Cisco phone system, but I give you the tools to understand what it takes to build those.
Okay. All right. Looking forward to it. I will certainly subscribe to any of these things, and looking forward. Hey, Chuck, we are near the top of the hour. I will have to go on. Thank you for your presentation and insights, and also hopefully it's useful for our audience. Yeah.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can send me an email to chuck.tomasi, that's Tomasi, @servicenow.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
All right.